Sueños to Success. I'm your host, Dr. Victor Rios. For those of you who may not know, Sueños means dreams in Spanish. This podcast is about turning dreams into success, however you define it. I started this series to highlight powerful stories from real everyday people who've overcome incredible odds, adversity, trauma, poverty, and are now shaping their own version of success. Throughout this podcast, you'll hear from a wide range of guests. Some have built wealth and are now teaching others how to do the same. Some are dedicated teachers leading the way for the next generation. Others are college students who've lived through intense challenges, violence, instability, generational poverty, and are now thriving as scholars at top universities as first-generation students. Jose Anzaldo is one of those students, a resilient young man who overcame significant obstacles growing up, picking lettuce in the fields with his mother. Jose is now a full ride scholar at UC Berkeley, embodying what it means to turn sueños into success. You'll hear from others like Demonte Thompson, a former foster youth from Compton, who's now a PhD student at UCLA, researching how to support young people in the foster care system. You'll even hear from Kendrick Lamar's teacher, Mr. Regis Inge, who had a big influence in teaching Kendrick poetry in 7th grade. It's a powerful story you can't miss. And you'll hear deeply personal episodes too, like a conversation I recorded with my own mother where I open up about the pain of abandonment in my childhood. We talk through trauma, depression, and even postpartum depression with honesty and compassion. What sets Sueños to Success apart is that these stories aren't just inspiring, they're grounded in research. Each episode explores the social issues at the heart of these journeys, along with evidence-based strategies for healings, resilience, and transformation. Whether it's mentoring, community support, education, or mental health care, we'll talk about what works and why. Throughout these episodes, you'll be reminded that measures of success aren't one size fits all. For some, success looks like financial independence. For others, it's a giving back to their community or being able to show up for their families. Whatever it looks like for you, Sueños to Success is here to explore how we get there and how we take care of ourselves along the way. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Victor Rios, and I hope you enjoy the journey. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sueños to Success, Dreams to Success. This is the podcast where we uncover inspiring stories of resilience, transformation, and personal success. Today, I have an incredible surprise. I have the privilege of speaking with a guest who really influenced, I'm telling you, one of the greatest storytellers, artists, and really mind shifters out there in our times. You've seen him around. You've heard his name in terms of who he influenced. He's an educator who not only taught language and poetry, but also nurtured a young mind that would go on to revolutionize music and storytelling. Mr. Regis Inge is the middle school teacher of Kendrick Lamar. He's here today to join me. He's dedicated his career to helping students in Compton, California, find their voices, their confidence, and their way forward. That's where he met the young Kendrick Lamar. His approach wasn't just about teaching grammar and structure to young people like Kendrick, but many, many others. It was about healing, about showing students that their stories mattered. And as we'll explore today, educators like Mr. Inge are the ones inspiring, motivating, and pushing forward. They're moving people and their lives a step forward every single day. They're doing more than just teaching. They're providing therapy, emotional support, healing, a pathway to resilience, and of course, prosperity. Before we dive into your story, and welcome, Mr. Inge, it's wonderful to have you. Yeah. I want to ask our listeners to reflect for a moment here. How many of us have had a teacher who saw something in us before we saw it in ourselves, who believed in us before we could even believe in ourselves, or believed in us so much that they tricked us into believing in ourselves? What does it mean for a child from a challenging environment to feel their story truly heard? Not only that, but to be told, hey, your story matters. Go out and tell the world about your story. Mr. Inge, thank you for being here, joining me. It's a big honor. Let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to become an educator, particularly in a place like Compton, California?
Well, first of all, big thank you for allowing me to be here today. So my inspiration really came from an unfortunate incident that happened when I was at Tuskegee University, where I went to school. My friend Phil, who was in the School of Education at that time, called me. I wasn't even in school to be an educator. I was in social work, actually. And he called me. He's like, hey, Regis, I need you to come with me to this elementary school. I'm doing some tutoring. I need you to help me. And so, of course, on a Saturday in college, I was reluctant to go. I wanted to stay home and sleep. But I ended up getting up and going on. And I remember this little girl named Ariel, because that's the one who I was talking to. I reached down and I said, hey, Ariel, come on and tell me what's 2 plus 2. And she said, B. And I said, no, 2 plus 2. And she's like, C. And I frowned and I turned to Phil and I said, Phil, I'm asking the little baby, like, she doesn't know 2 plus 2. And he's like, man, that's why I'm here. That's why I brought you here. Because I need you to help me help these kids. And I remember looking and pausing, and I didn't know the calling that had came upon my life already, just in that little incident. I just remember I went home and I called my mother and my parents, and I said, Mom, I think I'm going to change my major. What? What do you mean you're going to change your major? Like, what are you going to change it to now? Education. And I remember, my mom's a teacher, been teaching over 50 years. And she said, son, if you're going to be this teacher that you said you're going to be, I just need you to make sure that you go in it for the right reasons. That was her message to me. She said, now go ahead and change it if you're going to change it. So after that, after I graduated, I came back home to L.A. I did apply to L.A. Unified, and they didn't hire me. And I said to myself, whoever gets me, whoever hired, I'm going to give them everything they got. I'm going to do my best to make sure that I live up to what my mother asked me to do if I was going to be a teacher. So Compton Unified hired me. And today when I look back at it, it was the calling that was on my life. And I believe God, this is where he wanted me to be because he had a set of children that he wanted me to deliver a message to. And that's where I am. And I represent the city today. And I will always represent Compton. 1, because they gave me the chance. 2, because the city has embraced me like I'm like the son of Compton right now. Like I'm one of the sons of Compton, so because of my relationship with the kids.
That's amazing. Yeah. That was powerful. Let's go back to your mom saying, do it for the right reason.
Yeah.
What does she mean by that?
So again, so when you go to a HBCU like myself, one of the things that you're gonna learn at a HBCU is that the professors care about who you are. They know your name, right? And so because my mom went to Tuskegee Institute back in 1964, you're going to learn nurturing. That is the proponent. That's that ingredient that we have to have today, the nurturing part. So I learned nurturing through my mom, who was also from Alabama, right? So they have a traditional kind of raising their children. So that's what I got.
Tell me about HBCUs, because some of my audience, right, they're students in high school and they're trying to figure out, where am I going to go to college? There's no college out there for me, man. People like me don't belong in college. At least that's how I felt when I was in high school, man. People like me from my hood, man, we don't go to college.
Right.
So I was never taught about HBCUs. I was never taught about Cal States. I was never taught about HSI institutions where the majority of people did look like me and I could maybe fit in and feel like, okay, people here, as you said, they know your name, they care about you, they know you come from a familial culture, and they're gonna nurture you in that way. So tell us a little bit about HBCUs and why you decided to follow that generational path to go to one.
Yeah, so HBCUs have always been an institution because of the history of why they why they existed. So we know back in the Jim Crow era that HBCUs came to be because blacks were not allowed to be in certain white institutions at that time. So here we have my institution, Booker T. Washington, who founded Tuskegee on the premise of that if you come here, you will be educated, and where you will be able to not only enterprise yourself, but become a part of society. So our institution, like all HBCUs around the United States, believe that if you come, you will be educated, where you can go compete worldwide. So my experience there, like my mother, who made me go to Tuskegee, right? Because at that time I'm from LA. Like I didn't have a reason to go down to Alabama, but she saw and she knew that going down there, I would find myself because out here in LA, you don't really get the culture. You don't really understand the history. When you go down to these HBCUs, like I said, these professors know your name. They will call you out. They will make you do your work all over again because they're there to make sure that when you leave them, that you're going to be successful. And that type of teaching, that type of pours into a person like me who pours it into the students now. So you say it was hand to hand as far as what I want to see out of my students. That's the same thing my professors wanted to see out of me.
So you show up to this institution with majority black student population, majority black faculty, and they're saying, hey, we expect the world from you. Our expectations are all the way over here.
Yeah.
And you have to live up to those expectations. They're giving you that high support, but also that tough love, if you will. They know your name, they know your story, and they're going to hold you accountable.
Yep.
And in many ways now as an educator, and we'll get into this, you start to say, hey, my mom was asking me if I'm going to do this for the right reason, and the right reason is to pass on this kind of legacy to the students in Compton.
Exactly. I need you, if you're going to do this, what I do for a living, don't you treat those kids anything less than what they need to be treated as, right? My supervising teacher at Tuskegee before I graduated, her name was Ruby Hornbuckle. And I remember my last day of student teaching, she said, come here, son. And I was like, yes, ma'am. You got to remember, I'm 23 years old. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she said, sit down, son. And then I remember she took her glasses and she put them on the bridge of her nose. And she said, I want you to remember something. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she's like, the children won't know better unless you show them better. And at 23, I had zero understanding what that meant. But that's what I mean by when a person brings you up under their wing and gives you some wisdom that you don't even understand yet, and then sends you on. And now today, it's the same thing I do with my students. It's the same nurturing that I put in them before they leave me and let them know, I believe in you. Now I need you to go out there and work hard and go prove what I'm saying that you are. It gets handed down, right? But I never forgot that. The children won't know better unless you show them better.
That's powerful. That's powerful. So that little girl didn't know better. She didn't know. No one had taught her 2 + 2.
Right.
Right. She didn't have that nurturing. She didn't have that environment. And now you meet young people that maybe haven't been taught better.
Right.
And now you're teaching them better.
Right. Parents come and say, Mr. Inge, I know you're going to teach my child. Here are all his academic gaps. Or Mr. Inge, my child, he got kicked out of school. And Mr. Inge, all these different. And I just look at them and smile. And I say, I thank you for letting me know, but I don't ever take too much of what the last teacher did because I don't know the last teacher. You know what I mean? I also understand that teachers will label kids without really getting to know them. And 98% of the time, after I finish getting to know the child myself, we'll find that, this child's not bad. This child didn't need to be suspended. This child you just need to buy into the child. You know what I mean? The roughest of the roughest. The gang members are probably like the ones who I have the closest to me. And a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, you're a teacher. Why would you have gang members why would you be so close to these gang members? Because the gang members are the most fragile. When you deal with these gang members, in my experience, once they trust you, and as long as you don't break their trust, then they would acquiesce and try to do their best to do what it is that you're saying. It's very difficult. And the respect has to be there coming from both sides. If I can just tell you this quick story right quick. I'm thinking about Devon, and Devon is from the neighborhood Pyrus. And I remember he would come to my room every day with his burgundy belt, burgundy shoestrings, burgundy hat. And after we talked, but he respected me though, right? So every day he'd come to my room, he'd stand in the doorway, he wouldn't walk in, he would stand in the doorway, take out his shoestrings, take off his belt, give me his hat. But what I didn't do is throw his things on my desk. I folded it neatly and put it on my desk. And that action alone let him know, like, I understand where you come from and I understand what you representing right now. We're going to talk about that later. But I'm going to give you the respect because I know that the big homies raised you and I know what the hood means to you. So that right there was a roadway and a road map to be like, Mr. Inge is cool. Like, you know what I mean? He understand where I'm coming from. And the one thing they always say, Inge never judges. And I don't judge where they come from. I just want you to get better. And I'm going to help you. I'm going to show you some things and walk you through to get there.
Where'd you learn that respect? I mean, you got a mom that's a teacher. You went to college. You weren't necessarily caught up in the street life as a teenager, but you got to see peers go through it. Where did that knowledge of respecting that street life, because knowing that if you show a level of respect, they'll give it back to you.
Right. So even in my neighborhood where I grew up in Gardena, California, and we have gangs in that neighborhood also. There are different kinds of gangs. I feel like in Compton, Watts, those are South Central. Those are different levels, in my opinion, of gangs. But we still have them in my neighborhood. And when I was a teenager, they're the guys who were older than me, the big homies. They were the ones who bought us ice cream out the ice cream truck. They were the ones who was like, go to school. They were the ones who would kind of, when I came outside, they were the ones who were kind of making sure that the little kids go where they're supposed to go, right? And so that, I learned it there a little bit. But when I started teaching, one of my first students that I'm still very, very close with today, he was my first active gang member in the 5th grade, right? And teaching him helped me to learn how to teach kids from the street. So what I tell people today is that I don't really feel like I teach kids. The kids taught me how to teach. And he's a perfect example of why I need to get to know you first before I break up in this English book.
Yeah.
And figure out who you are, where you come from, how you move, how do you even get to school safe today? Because that's a lesson that I got taught, that sometimes these kids have to come through 3 or 4 different enemy neighborhoods just to get to school. So when they come to school wound up, I'm not saying, you need to be quiet, you need to sit down. How'd you get to school today? Like, and they gonna tell you, like, Mr. Inge, I had to go through this hood, I had to turn around this street, we had to run because of this to this. And you understand, like, okay, so he taught me back in 1995 that I opened the morning up with good morning. How's everyone doing this morning? Or if I get to school early, I'm at school early, they walk in my class, hey, how's everything going? You good? Like, I'm good, Mr. Inge, just a quick little interaction, just to let them know that your teacher's here for you. If you want to talk about something, let's talk about it. So they were the ones who taught me how to teach kids from the street in the inner city.
That's powerful. You say that you say, I'm not here to teach them. I'm here to learn from them. There's a Harvard education professor, Herbert Cole, and he wrote this little book called I Won't Learn From You. And he says that some of our kids that come from struggle, the reason they show up to school so resistant to learn is because the system has failed them so much and their family so much over time that that's their resistance. They're like, I'm just not going to learn from you. And they're resisting a system that is built on the assumption that you should just sit down and shut up and the teachers are here to teach you. And so what he says, we need to ask children permission if we can teach them. And the first step in asking them permission to teach them, as you say, is to learn from them first where they're coming from.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about the Pirate gang member, and once you gain his respect by respecting his items, right? Now he's starting to listen to you. He knows you're coming at him at a certain level of respect that he expects. What were your conversations like with him?
So when you're a teacher and you are interested in the nurturing of the art of nurturing, you don't teach the gang member in the beginning like you would teach the A+ student. You don't teach the A+ student like you would teach the lower learner, the lower reader. You don't teach the lower reader like you would teach the non-reader. You don't teach the A+ middle student like you would teach a foster child. Before you get into who you talking to and how you talk to them, you got to understand where they're coming from. The A+ student might be an A+ student, but they need emotional support. You need to talk to them about how to tell your parents to back off a little bit. I'm going to make straight A's, but please, if I make a B, please don't put me on punishment. So you see how you have to move the pieces around the board on who you're talking to. But when it comes to these gang members, you first have to humble yourself and tell yourself as a person, before you open your mouth, make sure you are ready to hear what they're getting ready to tell you. Don't frown at them. I can't believe you did. You have to really sit there and listen to it, even though you want to open your mouth and say, I hope to God that you didn't do that. But once you make on that level like that with them, they're going to tell you, Mr. This is what I did, right? And they're dead serious, as you know what I mean? So what you have to do is you have to say, okay, I don't want you to do this forever. So we need to get to a point to where that you are not active on the street anymore, and now you want to get into some more career building where you don't have to do this anymore. I understand why you do it now. And then every time we talk, whether it be grades, and if they say, Mr. Inge, I'm effing up right now. What you effing up in? Man, the science teacher, da. Okay, so listen. So if that's the case, whoever I'm talking to, girl or boy, I need to help you. Do I need to come up there to your school and talk to them? Oh, no, mister, you don't have to do that. Okay, so that means you're not doing what you're supposed to do because you don't want me to go up there and talk to the teacher because you know that teacher's going to tell me that you really haven't been going to class like you're supposed to. Let's just break it down. Let's just be honest, right? And so when you get to a relationship with a student like that, they know, like, all right, Mr. Inge, I'm going to start going to class. Because maybe that's one of the issues right there. You weren't going to class. Let's just be honest, right? It's not that the teacher didn't like you. She didn't like you coming in class late. How about that? You know what I mean? So let's get down to the bare understanding of why you're not performing in the class. I said, so if we're going to keep talking, because I don't have time to be wasting my time on somebody who don't want to work. If we're going to keep talking, I need you to take your little behind the class. I need you to get your notebook out. I never seen a scholar who's going to have his notebook in his back pocket. They usually have backpacks. So I need you to look like a student. I need you to act like a student. There's no way in the world that you're telling me right now that you can't get what's going on in science class when I know and I taught you back in middle school. Now, see, these are kids in high school now, right? Yeah. So it's the honest conversation, but I'm not talking to them as, especially at this particular age now, these a lot of them are 25, 30, 35 years old. Now we're talking about men. Now we're talking about family. So I had them when they were middle school kids, getting them in line, teaching them, pouring into them as a young man at that time, because I was like 25 when I started talking. Now they're 16, 17 years old. This is when the recruitment of the gang is really, really heavy, right? And now I'm preventing them from going to jail for 50, 60, 70, 80 years. getting them to go to class, graduate from high school, right? Now that they've done that, most of them who have done that, now we're talking about family. Now I'm getting them to understand that if you're not with your child's mother, that's fine. But it does not give you the reason to not to take care of your children.
You're with them every life stage. And
Every life stage.
I feel like every one of us needs a Mr. Inge in our lives where it's like a personal coach. You got that coaching kind of mindset and approach. And you also got the growth mindset. Like you're meeting a kid that's heavy in the streets. He's, thugged out. He's got his regalia on. And you're like, hey, I'm going to respect your stuff. I'm going to put it right here. But you have a growth mindset for him. You're like, hey, one day you'll grow.
Right.
And it is true. Even the research shows that 85% of gang involved individuals out there end up growing out of the gang. They end up having a family. They end up having a job. They end up getting a trade, going to school, becoming a professional, giving back to the community. And of course, out there in the world, we often think as gang members are like, they're going to be in it for life and they're going to be criminals for life. And so that's an important distinction to make because individuals like yourself working with young people, you know that they have a lot of potential for growth. Yeah. One of the ways that you've been able to help young people grow is by telling their story in a very unique way. And I know you've done this as a teacher, and that's to introduce poetry to your students. And I'm just curious because I know you introduced Kendrick Lamar to poetry, and I know he's been talking about you inspiring him, right, through poetry, through telling his story. So I want to hear that story, how it is that you found out that he was actually talking about you, having been one of the people that inspired him to tell his story through poetry. But before we do that, what made you realize that poetry is a place where I know I could tap into the souls of my students?
Right. So again, when you're in the classroom with these children, they're going to teach you. They're going to show you in one form or another what's the best way to handle certain situations. So at that time, so poetry is a part of curriculum anyway, right? But usually teachers don't really do this like me. I don't really teach poetry until like the springtime because, that's when you teach haikus and you want to teach, similes and metaphors. But actually, I teach it all the way through the year because when I'm teaching narratives, I'm teaching kids how to write narratives. We're talking, I say, if you want people to feel what you're feeling, then we're going to have to use figurative language. So I'm teaching it all the time, right? It's woven inside of my writing with them. But poetry at that time, usually I would do it in the spring. But at this particular time, I had to figure out something because two things were going on. Number one, in the L.A. County jail system at that time, the Hispanics and blacks were fighting inside the county jail. And then that violence spilled out onto the street, and then it ended up in the school systems.
Wow.
And so how I found out about it is that no one told me about it. I kind of saw it. So I walked in class one day. I had all my Hispanic students sitting on this side and all my black students sitting on this side. And they know that I'm going to see it immediately. Because just the other day, just yesterday, you guys were all hugging and dancing with each other, and now everybody's separated. So I'm asking them what happened. Did somebody start fighting? They were like, no. So for me, they knew that. I say, okay, fine, everybody, pencils down. We're not doing any schoolwork today. We're going to have family time. I have family time. Family time where you don't do schoolwork. We're going to talk about life.
Whoa. Not homework, life work.
We're going to talk about life.
Wow.
And so they eventually told me, like, Mr. Inge, this will happen in the county jail. And then my uncle said not to talk to the black kids. Or my family told me don't talk to the Hispanic kids. Okay, we about to have family time. I said, because Mr. Inge can't operate in this right here because I love you, each of you. Hispanic, black, white, Asian. I don't care who you are. If you have me, it's love, family, period. That's all we know, right? So the second reason is that when you do teach in inner city, these inner city kids have some experiences that are very, very tough at home. I've witnessed foster care. I've witnessed parents who had to endure sheriffs kicking down the door and bus going on, taking someone out the house. I had to endure some of my students who actually live in garages that have been turned into bed. You know, I've seen and heard some things, and they've shared with me some experiences that are tough, so much that a lot of it I've never had to experience. Right. This is what I mean by they taught me how to teach. That's what I mean, right? And so how can I get out of them what's wrong so they won't come to school and be ready to fight at 8 o'clock in the morning, or be triggered by someone talking about their shoes and not even knowing that that's their brother's shoes who got passed down 2 or 3 times because that's all they have. And it angers them, especially when you're a child who's 12 and 13 years old looking at another child with some Jordans on, and here you are wearing your brother's shoes who's 4 or 5 years older than you now, right?
Yeah.
And so poetry gave me the ability for the child to express themselves freely without boundaries, because I took the boundaries off. So the class, if we're going to do this, this is Mr. Inge's rules. Mr. Inge's rules is say, if there's a 4-letter word that you need to say in order to get that out of you, then use it, but just use it democratically. Don't use it just to be using to play games, because then I'm going to get upset. But if you're so angry with what's going on in your life, the turmoil that's going on in your life, then use it. By all means, use it. And even when I let you go up there and talk and say your poem in front of the class, if you say that word, I won't flinch. So you don't have to look up and think that your teacher's going to look at you and reprimand you. No, I'm not going to reprimand you, because if you're being authentically real about how painful it is for you to see your father being deported, then say it. If you think that this word that you're getting ready to use is depicting how you felt when your father didn't come pick you up like he was supposed to, then say it. But just understand, let the authenticity of what you're saying be real.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? And that's how I got kids with journals now, because they end up, I introduced poetry.com to them at that time, and they would come to school with mugs that had I Love Poetry on them. I remember it. They had I Love Poetry, because the poetry.com had sent them to say, hey, you got so many views on this, that, we're going to send you. And they were that thing was a trophy, that their words mattered to somebody out there who saw what you were writing and identified with it. And that's what this is all about.
So you had a little operation going where young people got to share their pain, their anger, their fury through poetry. And that's within the context that Kendrick Lamar enters your classroom.
Right.
Wow.
7th grade, he came in, and it's the same thing. Not only do I introduce it, not only do I introduce figurative language in poetry, I introduce it in their writing, period. If you want people to see what you saw, or hear what you heard, or smell what you smell, I want people to taste the smell of the feet. I want people to feel how it felt when you whatever it is that you're writing in your story. I feel like that vaults you to the next level of writing, because again, I don't follow any teacher how they teach. I really don't. But when you come to me, this is going back to the HBCU. This is going back to Dr. Bailey. This is going back to Mrs. Krause. This is going back to Mr. Grant. These are going my mentors who were at Tuskegee, who wanted to bring the best out of you. And that's my thing. I want to bring the best out of you. I don't want you to just write a story. I want you to write a story that people be like, man, I can feel this right here, what you're saying.
Yeah.
Bring it alive.
Man, I wish I was in your 7th grade classroom too. But it wasn't all linear, right? Like, it's not like 1 minute Kendrick's in your classroom, you're inspiring him with poetry. The next minute he's a superstar.
Right.
It's more like he finishes off, he goes off to other places, does things in life, and then you're just hearing people in the background kind of telling you, hey, did you hear, Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so after I had Kendrick and he graduated, most of those kids who go from Vanguard end up going to Centennial High School. So again, because Vanguard was such a family school, we were a family unit school, so I knew everything that was going on at Centennial, right? What I didn't know, and I knew Kendrick was right. So when I had him, just to caveat right quick, Dr. Rios, when I had Kendrick was academically sound already in the 7th grade. He could write already, right? The thing that I wanted to do was looking at him as if I'm looking at my own child. How can I make my child better? Right? That's what this is about. How can I make my child better? I can see that he wrote this, but a teacher who's looking at these children as if they're own will say, this is good, but I know I can make this boy a little bit better in what he's doing, right? And that's where he was using words that he would use with his friends. But I said, one thing I have about me before I answer your question is that I teach my students today that when you open your mouth, it's going to tell a lot about you. Mm. And I look at my Hispanic girls in class right now, and I say, this society, this world has a profile for you already. You're female, you're Hispanic, you're from Compton. They already have performed this profile on you already. I do that with my African-American kids. I do that with my Hispanic boys. And I say, when you open your mouth, they're either going to verify what they thought or they're going to be very surprised at what you thought. Mm. And which one do you want to be? So if you're gonna choose, you want to choose the opposite, and you want people to respect you when you open your mouth because they already have a profile on you, then that means you need to know how to talk. You need to know how to enunciate words. You need to know vocabulary. So you want people to know, like, hey, I'm a sixth grader, but I like to say the word impartial. I'm a sixth grader, but I like to say the word demolished instead of broken. I mean, it's the words. It's the words I want them to start using to understand that, hey, I need you to be at the next level when it comes to his writing. So with Kendrick, back in those days, there was a thesaurus. And so I read all my students' papers, every last word. That's how you get kids writing at the next level, because you're constantly monitoring. They can type something, they can write something that looks very, very pretty. And they didn't say a doggone word. They didn't say anything. But they knew their teacher was going to read it. So when Kendrick would bring me his work and all the rest of the students, I'll take their work. I got a pen right here, circle this, revise this right here, and I give it back to him. Say, Kendrick, all these words that are circled, go get that thesaurus. And I want you to go find a word that means the same, but a higher level word. He'd take it, all the rest of the kids. I remember I had a bookshelf full of them because I knew that I wanted my kids to open their mouth and sound like they're on top of their game. So he took that thesaurus and he would go back and put in different words here, different words, and I'll say, okay, come on, let's revise this. I don't want to hear no, I did this because. First, put your reasoning, put your evidence, and then add it with the vocabulary. And you keep doing that from September all the way to June, and they know that your teacher's going to read it. Eventually, they'll start to gather and start to turn from what they used to do and what your teacher wants you to do today, right? And so I felt what he did. He just took that as a sign of a challenge, and said, if Mr. Inge is making me change all these words, then I just want to find more words that I could use to be able to express myself. See, that goes back to the expression. I want you to express yourself, but I want you to express yourself when you open your mouth. You don't be an embarrassment to yourself either. Use your words. I don't talk about no big, enormous, gigantic. Like that. And they get it. Like, okay. Impartial. They love that word. Right? I'm like, what's your perspective? Like, Mr. Inge, I'm impartial. Why? I can infer it. Tell me your inference.
Rather than, I don't care.
I don't care. Why you don't care? What evidence do you have that you don't care? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm going to make you learn up.
Wow. That's that growth mindset. That's incredible. So Kendrick takes off, right? He goes off to high school, keeps some tabs on him, but eventually, right, you hear back.
Yeah, eventually, I have a young lady that I mentored who became a teacher, right? So she calls me and she's like, Regis. I was like, what's going on, Colleen? And she's like, so we had this rapper who came to my class today. I said, okay. And she's like, he talked about you the entire time. Oh. And I said, rapper? She's like, yeah. She said he kept talking about you and how you taught English and why he loved words so much. I said, what rapper? She said, his name is K-Dot. I was like, K-Dot? know K-Dot. I said, I don't know K-Dot. She said, I said, did he tell you his real name? She said, yeah. She said, hold on. She said, she paused for a second. She's like, hold on, I wrote it down right. She's like, do you know Kendrick Duckworth? I said, Kendrick Duck. Wait. I said, wait. I said, Colleen, is he short? She's like, yeah. I said, yeah. I said, Colleen, I do know Kendrick Duckworth. I said, wait a minute. I said, Kendrick was in your class? He said, yeah, Mr. Inge. Kendrick is a rapper, and he's coming up with this music. He said this music is called Overly Dedicated, and he just came out with it. And I said, Colin, I can't believe it. I said, but let me call you back. So I jump on in there right quick, and I look up Overly Dedicated, and there his face is, right? And I'm like, I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. And so I was a little hesitant to listen to it because I didn't want to listen to some music that I was like, I can't listen to this, man. Like, I can't listen to this, right? You know what I mean? I can't. But when I heard some of the songs he was singing, I was rapping, I was like, yeah, this is fire. I said, because I'm an 80s baby. I grew up in the 80s with rap, right? So, you know, I'm Pac, I'm Biggie Smalls, I'm KRS-One, I'm Wu-Tang. Like, so I like lyrics. And I was listening to him, I was like, yeah. So not too long after that, he texted me because his friends and I are very close. All his friends that you see on stage, I taught most of them too, right? So I got a text. He said, big bro, this is Kendrick. I said, Kendrick, what's going on? So we talking. I was teaching at Centennial. He said, I'm going to come up there. I'm going to come up there and see you. And he did. He was up there actually for homecoming. He did Centennial's homecoming, did like and then he texted me like, Mr. Inge, I'm about to come around. I'm got to come in your room right now. I said, all right, cool. So he came in here, and that's when Section 80 came out. And I said, Kendrick, I listened to Section 80, and I was like, man, I'm going to tell you something right now, Kendrick. You're going to have to be patient with people because you're talking about some things that historically that I don't think people are going to understand. He said, what you mean? I said, you remember you in there, you were talking about Martin Luther? I said, people are going to think you're talking about Martin Luther King. And you're not talking about Martin Luther King. You're talking about the other Martin Luther. So we laughed about it. And I said, what I don't want you to do, though, don't you water down your lyrics to help people like really like your music. I said, I want them to learn up, which means you keep your lyrics high. You make people think just like you're doing, and let people get to understand like your lyrics are not surface. You really want people to think. And then when you look at his albums from Overly Dedicated to Mr. Morale, to even GNX, but you know, mostly on Mr. Morale, you see a prism of thought, healing, hope. It's just themes. And so he's at a point today, man, I just sit back and, you know, getting the Pulitzer and, you know, these things. That means you have really taken your writing to a level to where you impact people around the world, man. And that's, I mean, our conversations are usually around that. Like, man, I'm proud of you, man, but I'm proud of him as a man first, Mr. Rio. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm proud of Kendrick as a man, not as an artist.
Yeah. This is the legacy, right? So we look back, just your influence, and I'm sure he has influences from other spaces, but just your influence, it goes back, right? Your mom, being from the South, going to Tuskegee herself, being a teacher, a veteran teacher, knowing how to teach students, sending you off to college, you deciding you want to change lives. You're that little girl trying to 2 + 2, and she's saying ABC. And you know there's a crisis in communities of struggle, and you got to be part of the change making that happens to educate young people. And then you have a tradition, and that tradition is part of a long legacy. And then all of a sudden, you set up a context, family time, an environment. Kendrick walks into that. Now he's part of a legacy, clicks, and now he's a Pulitzer Prize winning philosopher is what he is. And on top of that, of course, a great artist.
Right.
But the fact that he's our top philosopher of our time, where he can be at the Super Bowl and people are eating nachos and chicken wings, watching them and just smiling and laughing, but you really hear the lyrics. It's going to take a generation to decipher those lyrics.
Right.
That's
Right.
what makes him the philosopher, right? And
Right.
it's incredible. And the fact that you were able to contribute to that, that's beautiful. And just thinking of the ways in which, like, there's more teachers out there as well that, teach young people that come from adversity, right? It's like we all would like to see more teachers develop more Kendricks out there, right?
Right.
In order to do that, there's the research that shows that emotional support, is very important. There's some studies that have come out. There's a study published in Child Development.
Mm-hmm.
It found that students in high poverty areas who had emotionally supportive teachers were 50% more likely to report feeling higher self-worth and 30% more likely to complete high school. Going back to those moments where, you might have seen, like you said, Kendrick was already high level in terms of his writing and academics.
Right.
What do you think you add to the emotional side of things to really make people feel like, oh, I can do this. I got this.
Belief.
Mm.
Belief. So the expectation. I don't care where you came from. I don't care where your grade level is. If I'm teaching you a 7th grade and you coming in at the 4th grade, well, we're gonna get you at least 6th grade, where you can go compete at the next level, right? And you're not gonna tell me no, and you're not gonna tell me I can't, because I've taught too many years where I've seen a person who I'm looking at right now in my head who was a non-reader, came straight from Mexico, non-reader, and today he owns his own State Farm office.
Wow.
He came to my classroom and spoke to my students. You cannot tell me anything about a child, because I'm pretty much taught every child that you can teach. If I can, Mr. Rios, man, I'm thinking about Sandy Burks right now. Sandy Burks was in special ed, and she kept coming to my class. This happened back in 2002, somewhere around up in there. Sandy Burks kept coming to my class, and it was a special ed classroom, but the special ed classroom was right next door to my class. And she kept coming to my classroom, like, Mr. Inge, can I come to your class? And I'm like, Sandy, now you know you can't come to my class. Now why you know? Every day she was coming. Finally, I said, Sandy, fine. I'm going to go talk to the counselor, and I'm going to see if they'll allow you to come to my English class, and then you just have to go back to your other class, when you're finished. That girl came, and not only was she come, when the state test came, she was number 5 out of that whole class. We still talk today.
Oh, man.
She lives in Washington, got 2 kids. She was in the military. But you got to have a belief, and you got to hold her hand. It's gonna be a little path. She came to my classroom and spoke to my kids like three years ago.
Wow.
And it's kids like her, man, that will keep me going. Like some days I don't feel like going to teach. And people say, Mr. But thank you. I thought you would like. I do love to teach, but at the same time, you gotta understand, I got these kids' lives on my hand. Some days I don't have it. And so it helps me. It helps me when I've trained my kids to come and tell me, if you're going through something, you come and tell me in the beginning of the class, so I can make room. I can make provision for you. I won't be sitting here badgering you about homework, and here you are, had probably one of the worst days of your life as a 12-year-old 6th grader. So now they see that their teacher is human.
Yep.
So when I tell them, children, I don't have it today, which means I'm going to get through the best way I can, but I need you to understand it might not be all the energy I usually try to get out, usually trying to put out. Yeah. It's the constant give, take, give, take. It's the constant give. It's the constant take. It's balance.
The balance. Yeah, Mr. Inge, just like, you've seen some loss as well. Yeah. Lost some students along the way.
Yeah, I've lost 32 students since 1995 when I started teaching. Only 2 have been natural causes. 30 of them gunshot wounds. Say 28, 29 of them been gang related. I've been to 19 funerals. I had to stop going after 19 because it just became too emotionally stressing. It was hard for me to just to go and see one of my students laying down in that box like that, right? And then I have one right now who's in prison for 119 years. I do go see him once a year, like during Christmas time. He's probably say, well, why do you go see him if he has so many years? He's still my student.
They're always a student.
He's still the family. He made a bad error in judgment, bad choice, and he has to pay for it. But he's kind of one of those students. I don't know if you ever met one of those kids. You're probably one of those kids. If I had a house big enough, I could have just taken a bunch of them. I don't think they would have done what they've done, but the environment had more power than I did at that time, right? He sends me a birthday card every year. And the reason, 2 things with Antoine is that he not only sends me a birthday card every year. I remember the first year he sent me a birthday card, and he's like, Mr. Inge, I wrote this card 3 times. He said, because I wanted to put the commas and the semicolons in the right place. So I'm sitting here looking at these cards, man. I'm like, this boy's looking at 119 years thinking about commas and semicolons.
Because that's what you taught him was important.
And I also told him, I said, if you're going to be in there, go in there. He's a smart kid. Like I say, he just had a bad error in judgment. He's a smart kid. He was a smart kid. He's still smart. And I said, if you're going to be in there, teach a class. So he ended up teaching the class.
Oh, he became a teacher there.
Yeah, he was one of the instructors up in there.
That's
He would write me, and he telling me about Mr. Inge. I'm teaching this class because he was on point. But where he lived in that environment, it was more powerful than my 8 o'clock to 2:45, right? But I put money on his books every month. I'm making sure that he knows that that even though I'm outside, he's in there, he's still loved. You know what I mean? So I want everybody to understand that if you bring him in and you say that they're family, then let them be family, because every time that the family does something wrong, you can't be ready to excommunicate them. You got to love them even harder. You might have to love them from afar, and I've had to love some of my former students who are gang members, active gang members at that time. I had to love you from afar because you're doing action that's going against what I'm teaching in school, and they knew it. And then when they come back around, they're like, "Hey, Inge, can we talk a little? Can we talk next week or something like that?" I'm like, "What you doing?" He's like, "Inge, I'm good. I'm good. All right, let's talk then." So there were rules to the game with me. Like they knew they had me. I mean, I'm always be there for them. I was there for them even in death. But understand that I want you to try to do better. If I can tell you, one thing that's kind of humorous for me was that I ran into one of my former students. He has to be about 36, 37 years old now, and he's like, "Inge, what's up?" And I was like, "B, what's up, man? How you been?" He's like, "Man, I'm doing good, Inge. I'm doing good." Then he was like, I said, "What you doing for yourself?" He's like, "Inge, I'm just keeping 100 with you. Like, I just been hustling. I've been hustling right now, Inge, because, I end up having to take care of my granny because I had to pay my granny house note and then my baby mama, and then I got my little girl in private school." I was like, "That's good." I said, "So what you?" He said, Inge, "I'm just keeping 100. Like, I'm not on the street. I'm just moving some things around on the street." I said, "Boy, how much money you making?" He said, "Probably like about 4,000 or 5,000 a week." I said, "Boy, are they hiring?" Nah, I So he said, "No." He's like, he said, "But I'm just taking care of Granny. I'm taking care of the house. I'm just doing everything I'm supposed to do as a man." I said, "Okay, cool." I said, "But I want you to have an exit plan, because I don't want you to hustle forever. Hustling ain't gonna last too much longer, right? You gotta take that money and do something with it. So when it's time, then you ready to move and have a smooth transition." The trust that him telling me the truth like that and me making it a humorous thing by saying, "Are they hiring?" gave him the ease, like, okay, he's not mad at me for doing what I'm doing right now, but he also telling me He don't want me to do it forever.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by not being so rigid to where you're telling these kids, I can't talk to Mr. Inge anymore because he can't see me where I am today.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's all started back in Tuskegee.
Wow. The full circle there.
The full circle.
You're educated in a legacy.
Right.
Really in a Black education tradition that goes back hundreds of years.
Yeah.
In the struggle. And now passing it on to this new generation in ways that they can understand in their own modern day cultural world. But the legacy is still there.
Yeah.
That's powerful. You know, at the end of the day, we're in the business of healing. We're helping communities heal. We're helping our students heal. We got to heal ourselves sometimes. Like, as you mentioned, sometimes you can't show up as a teacher, as a mentor, as a community leader. You can't show up 100% because you got personal stuff going on.
Right.
When you can't show up 100%, even if it's 10%, you can show up, give it that 100% within that 10%.
Right.
And that's what you seem to be doing. That makes a difference. You know, in this work that we do, what I call emotion-informed approaches, we're always in tune with the emotions of our students. We teach strategies that acknowledge students' trauma, and we work to heal them while educating them. And sometimes people shy away from wanting to be healers.
Right.
A healer, maybe a therapist, a psychologist, but we can't afford the time to wait for that therapist to show up for some of our students.
Right.
Sometimes we have to implement those therapy strategies along the way. And more importantly, teach them how to implement their own therapy strategies. So with the poetry that you've taught students, with the life lessons that you've taught them,
Right.
with the family time, and letting them know, saying, hey, we're not going to do homework right now. We're doing life work. You know, we're not going to talk academics right now. We're going to solve this community dispute where the Latinos and the African Americans are fighting each other. No, we're about to talk it out, and we're about to figure this out.
Absolutely.
And then nurturing a generation that goes and speaks truth to people, but also truth to power. And when I look back at the work that Kendrick has done in his music and in his philosophy, that's what he's doing. He's speaking truth to people, right? People hear him and it's like, oh, I like this. But also truth to power, which is the piece that it's going to take us a long time to even figure out what he's talking about because it's so high level.
Right.
Layers, and that's the layers that you've talked about. So thank you, Mr. Inge, for joining us today. I just want to, you know, you're so full of knowledge and inspiration. So I just want my audience, you know, out there, they might be young people trying to figure out their lives. You know, they might be individuals that are like, hey, man, I need a career change. You just inspired me. I'm an attorney now, but you just inspired me to go be a teacher. Or it might be someone that's struggling out there listening and being inspired by your words and the way you've changed lives. What advice do you have for our listeners out there in terms of just like picking themselves up when it's a tough time?
Yeah. So two things to the students out there, to the teenagers, to the young adults. You know, many of my students from the past have come and told me some of their careers that they want to do or pursue, and I never judged them, right? And all I will say is this: one, you gotta get a village around you who believes in your dream. Don't let people box you into having to go to the university or the college to achieve your dream. I've taught a young man who was very, very good at building a mini bike, and I convinced him to go to airplane mechanic school. And now he's worked for Southwest. He lives in Texas now.
That's awesome.
So that alone, and the caveat is that I was like, man, now your mama gets to fly to Mexico for free. And that's all he needed to hear. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't about university or college that a lot of teachers and school systems push kids in. Get to know you get to know what you believe in, get to know what you're really talented in. And all I say is, go do it. You have to be certified now. You can't just be willy-nilly out there. You have to go, what is the certification for you to be what it is that you're trying to be and be good at it. You attack it morning, noon, night until you get to a point to where they come to find you. You're no longer looking for them. That's for them. To the adults, Kendrick did not have a banner on top of his head that said, I'm going to be a hip-hop superstar one day. He looked like just like the average kid that was walking around Compton just like anybody else. The only difference is that I treated him like he was my son at that time and poured into him what I would pour into my own son. The drive, the discipline, the push, the being transparent with him and show him how Mr. Inge had 3Ds and 2D, 3Ds and 2Cs and 1B in 8th grade. And they were like, you? Yes, me. That's why. But the consequences are different today than they were. That's why you can't do what I did. But you don't have to even do that at all. So I need all adults out there who have kids or who are teachers and educators. Let's take a second and just talk to them without interrupting them and figure out what they like to do. And if we don't have it at the school, how do we get it at the school if enough kids want to do it? Because what we're trying to do, we're just trying to produce young people that want to work, but they want to work in what they want to work in, and we don't get a chance. We don't get to sit there and tell them that they need to be doing something else when they're clearly gifted at doing something that they want to do. How about showing them how to get there, how to do it, even if we have to sit at the computer with them? Because if you, what does that sound like? That sounds like a parent would do something like that. But if we're really trying to get them to be a productive member in society, then we may have to acquiesce to what they want to do and be okay with that instead of stuffing them into a college that they had no intentions of going in the first place. That would be my...
There you have it, folks. Mr. Inge, Kendrick Lamar's teacher, who inspired him to go on to do incredible things, an incredible educator that is changing lives, as you heard from him, by having those very high expectations of students, by believing in them so much that they end up believing in themselves, by making sure that he provides for them whatever they need. Thank you for being a Earth Angel, Mr. Inge. Thank you for joining me on Sueños to Success. Until next time, everyone, keep turning those dreams into steps towards success, learning from amazing people with wisdom like Mr. Regis Inge here. Take care, everyone.